That's awesome. That's sweet.
Okay.
Is that your wife?
That's my wife.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool.
It'll pop up here a little bit. I can use my phone for now.
I'm going to just introduce
Yeah.
give me
Let's
a
do it.
couple minutes. We're good.
Let's do it.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Awesome. Ernie, we good? Welcome, everybody. Welcome. Thank you all for your patience. I'm going to introduce Ike now, but as I was sharing with you, this man's a rock star. He's a rock star for sure, but he also is someone who has spent the last, I think, 24 hours trying to make his way here from Tempe, Arizona, and he made it, thank God, and we're so grateful to him for his willingness to be here. Of all the talks so far this semester, this is the one I've been looking forward to the most. Not only for what I'm sure he will say, but yeah, you'll hear the passion, the drive, the faith that he has in the Lord and his ability to just speak truth, oftentimes to power. And so I think it's great that we're here tonight to just be with him and to hear what he has to say. Growing up in Missouri as the son of Nigerian immigrants, the life of Ike Ndolo is a woven tapestry of experiences. Hymns and Bob Marley, injustice and mercy, discrimination and acceptance. As a result, Ike has become a well-tested navigator of the human experience. He aims to share and guide you through stories that inform and even reorient your perspective. With deep and soulful gospel roots and calling on modern influences such as Anderson .Paak and St. Paul and the Broken Bones, Ike released his newest album, Shine, in 2018. When not at home with his wife and 2 kids, he can be heard leading worship with his collective Village Lights or talking on the Disinherited podcast, which is great, by the way. Highly recommend it. So I'm going to let Ike just get into it. Ike Ndolo, everybody. Thank you.
I have had a time getting here. And it's, yeah, it felt like one of those things that didn't seem like it wanted to happen. Like I was like, has anybody ever seen The Truman Show? Anybody? You guys maybe a little too young. Truman Show is like one of my favorite Jim Carrey movies. And he's like this kid who was adopted when he was like a baby, and this TV station adopted him and put him in this big dome, and there's like cameras on him the whole time. And his whole desire is to like see the world. But he's in this dome. He doesn't know it. He's the star of this reality TV show. So when he gets older, he tries to like, he's like, okay, I'm going to Fiji. That was his thing. And he gets on the bus, and everyone around him, they're all actors. His mom, his dad, his friends are all actors. And so he gets on the bus, and he's like, I'm going to Fiji. He's excited. And, you know, everyone's like sweating because it's like, this is not in the script, him wanting to go to Fiji. And the bus driver is like, sorry, son, the bus is broken. And all that to say is I felt like I was in the Truman Show for the past over 24 hours. It's like, what is happening? So anyway, it's good to finally be here. I had a friend and a roommate who had no passion. And this is like, it's going to seem like a weird story, but he had no passion. And he said this is out of his own mouth. And it was a shock to me when he told me this, because just the day before, I was telling a mutual friend of ours, like, his name is Matt. And I'm like, man, Matt, you know, he's like so passionate. You know, he was a seminarian, he was a convert, you know, he was like passionate about soccer when he was growing up. Like he has like, you know, he's passionate. And this mutual friend that I was talking to, we'll call him Tim, because that's his name. And he said, Tim was like, laughed at me. He was like, no, he's not passionate. He has no passion. He's like, I'm like, why would you say that about our friend Matt? He's like, I'm telling you, man, like, and clearly Tim knew more about Matt than I did. I assumed, you know, because of just like what I'd seen, that he was a passionate dude. And me and this mutual friend of ours, Tim, went back and forth about, I was just trying to praise Matt for being this passionate guy. Tim is like, he's not passionate. Trust me. He was also my roommate. Matt was also my roommate. So the next day he comes to me, he was like kind of a smirk on his face. He's like, hey, I heard you were talking to Tim, and Tim said that you were saying I'm a passionate guy. I'm like, yeah, man, you're passionate. You do all these things. He's like, nah, I'm not. I'm like, what? He's like, no, I don't have any passion. I'm really pretty even keeled about all things. I'm like, soccer when you're a kid? He's like, nah, it was just kind of a thing I did. It's like, converting into Catholicism? He's like, I mean, it was cool. You were a seminarian still. He was adamant. It's like, I am not a very passionate person. I was like kind of dumbfounded. And it was like so weird to me. This happened several years ago. And I don't know what he's up to now. He's married with several kids, and I think he's a nurse practitioner or something like that. And I don't know, maybe he found some passion in his life or something to care about. I'm sure his kids and his family, when we had this conversation, he wasn't married at the time. But it was just, that conversation was funny to me just because I thought it was like so not my experience. And maybe it was because of my own background. Because, I grew up in Missouri, Columbia, Missouri. So my parents moved to Missouri, Columbia, when I was just 8 months in utero. So I wasn't even born yet. My parents moved to Missouri and from Nigeria. And I don't know, you probably haven't been around a lot of Nigerians. I'm not sure if you have. But if you've ever been in a room full of Nigerians, you think that they're all angry at each other. They're just like yelling. And it's not, you don't be alarmed. If you ever find yourself in a situation where you're like, why are all these people so angry? It's like, no. Listen, we use our hands. We're very passionate. And it could be about simple things like, who's better, LeBron or Jordan, And, Nigerians are really quick to become experts on the thing. And I've had many loud argument with Nigerian friends, family members. We're not angry, we're passionate. One time I was a youth minister, when I was a youth minister way back in the day, and I was in Mesa, Arizona, and a young adult volunteer who had been kind of in and out, her commitment wasn't like super there, and I was like very young and very, very zealous about this youth program. And there's two youth ministers, and I was one of them. She came up to me, she's like, hey, I heard you guys are doing this thing today. And I'm like, yeah. She's like, well, I never heard about it. And, how come you guys didn't let me know? I was like, well, you weren't around. And then I just like, what I thought was this like exhortation about being committed to ministry. I'm like going in. And then the other youth minister comes over. She's like, Ike, are you preaching? And the girl that I was talking to just starts bawling. I'm like, oh, crap. And, I just kind of like walk away. I'm like, sorry. And she's like, what was that? I'm like, I wasn't mad. She's like, you got to tone it down, man. I'm like, okay, my bad. So that's just who we are. That's who I am. And that's kind of where I come from. So grew up in Missouri, born and raised Catholic. Went to a small church in Columbia my whole life. It was it was a college town like this, the University of Missouri. And my dad was a mechanical engineer. My man Jimmy over there got me some burgers. And my mom was a daycare teacher. And we were a church-going family. My mom was super religious, made sure that we never missed Mass. You guys get snow up here, right? Like it gets bad. Missouri, we got snow during the winter as well. Probably nowhere near this, but there's a lot of times it was bad. We had a proper winter, and there was always when it was snowing on a Sunday, I thought, maybe this will be the time that I'll get a break from church, but no, never. And you'd think that my mom, being from Nigeria, not used to snow, she'd be like, no, thank you. She's like, listen, she'll miss a lot of things. She'll miss work. She would miss but she'll never, ever miss Mass. And so that was my upbringing. You know, I have a younger brother and a younger sister, and we were altar servers, we were active in the youth group, and, you know, I learned a lot of my faith from my mom, for both my parents, but in very different ways. My dad was born and raised Catholic as well. He was quieter about his faith. You know, I'd be getting ready for school and I'd go take a shower and I'd see my dad just kind of quietly on his knees, you know, and like, oh, you know, like every once in a while I'm like, does he care about this? And then just see him kind of like in that quiet devotional time. It's like, okay, that's cool. Yeah, he does. He cares about this. My mom was like the outwardly expressive one. We had night prayer every single night, no matter who was over. I didn't have any Catholic friends spend the night, so it was like, you know, my Jewish friends or like my Muslim friends would come over, and my mom's like, we have night prayer. I'm like, not Nick, he's Jewish. She's like, don't care, he's coming night prayer. If they were staying the night through Sunday, best believe they were going to Mass. So, you know, that was my mom, and I learned a lot of the outward stuff about being Catholic from my mother. You know, I learned all the prayers. I learned what the feast days meant. You know, kind of like the ins and outs of what it means to be Catholic. I learned a lot of that from my mom, and I saw in both of them a lot of passion. But my mom was really kind of the backbone and anchor of faith life in our house. You know, she sang in the choir. Sometimes when she was like really feeling it, she took us to like a random revival, like black revival. She's like, she would get us out of you know, the house on, I don't know, Friday, and we would go to a big tent revival. I remember one time she took us to this one revival, and this preacher was praying over me. He was big, and he was at the time he was like praying with his hands on my head. He was like, invite all the young people up here. I want all the young people up here. I want to pray over these young people. We gotta get these young people saved. I'm like, I have no idea what's going on. I'm Catholic, you know, but my mom just wanted a little bit more oomph, you know. So we went, you know. I remember going up to this preacher, and he, you know, he's like laying his hand. He's big. It's like big sausage fingers on my head, and he's like squeezing. His eyes are shut so tight. You know, like when the naughty kid in class, so they would flick their eyelids in and out. You know, you ever see that? Were you the naughty kid? Probably. Yeah, but he was closing his eyes so tight, the insides of his eyes were just like popping. I need to tell you this because it's like burned in my brain, okay? But it was, I remember just like, and he was just like, God, would you just pour your spirit on them? I'm just like, this is not at all what I'm used to. But it was cool to get exposed to different expressions of faith. And that was really, my mom was she's just a passionate person, especially for faith. And I learned a lot from her. You know, growing up Catholic in Missouri, we were one of very few black families in the church. And, you know, obviously my parents, being from Nigeria, their experience, that wasn't their experience, obviously. And so moving to the States, you know, it was hard, I think, for both of my parents, and they expressed it in different ways. My mom, you know, to this day, is this very faithful. She's the church lady. It's okay, you know. She's if there's a daily mass, she's gonna be there. Sometimes we'd be like, "Hey, you want to do this thing with us?" And she's like, "Sorry, can't. I've got mass, and it's a Tuesday." I'm like, "Come on, Mom, we just want to hang out with you." She's like, nope, sorry. I just missed. 1 second, destructive. You know, so that's always my mom. But I remember even early on her passion for her faith, which was beautiful for me to see, but her passion for justice. Because she was in a place that was unfamiliar, a lot of times hostile to her and my dad. And my dad had this kind of like quiet way of dealing with these things. Oh, thank you. Man, burgers, water, and Tony. He was quiet about kind of how he went about dealing with even some of the injustices in his life. My mom was never quiet. If she saw something, whether it be against herself, her husband, her kids, especially her kids, she was going to speak out. She was going to say something. I was in fourth grade, and we had family, kind of family. Nigerians, if there's another Nigerian family that you know, they're automatically your family. So we had like cousins and aunts and uncles that we weren't related to, but we just called them aunts and uncles. And so we were visiting family in Illinois, and just like one state over, and we're driving back home. It's after a Sunday mass, or something, we're all kind of dressed our days, and we're going through these small towns, and we passed through this small town, this gas station, which I'm sure we had stopped at many times because we would visit this family often, and they we're just kind of there hanging out, and I'm young, but I get out of the car. Me and my brother and my sister, we get out of the car, we go get snacks and whatnot. Get back in the car, my mom and my dad are kind of, not arguing, but they're just kind of like talking, elevated voices. And my mom is like, I'm going to go tell him. And she was like, and my dad is like, just leave it alone, leave it alone. She's like, no, I'm going to go tell him. And I had barely noticed this, but when we got there, I think within maybe 5 minutes or whatever, several police cars kind of showed up. And so my mom, who had this experience before, was like, I'm not going to take this. So she goes, gets out of the car, marches back in to the gas station. And I'm like the kid who's like, I want to see the drama, so let me go see what's going on, like, let's go. So I hop out with my mom, following her. I'm like, okay, let's see this. And she just starts giving this gas station attendant, is like, she's like, we are a family who's been through this town several times, but we're a family, clearly a family. And within a few minutes, you had all these police officers descend upon us for no reason. And, he was like trying to diffuse and deflect, and my mom wasn't having it. And, I think she said, we are Catholics, we're Christians, we're good people. And I just remember, I was in fourth grade. I don't remember much except for seeing my mom, who had this zeal and zealousness for her faith, but it like extended into this very important part of what should be a very important part of a Christian's life, which is justice. And it formed me super early on. I released a record in 2018. So a little bit more about me. So I grew up in Missouri, and then I moved to Phoenix, Tempe, Arizona when I was 18 to do this evangelization training program called Youth Arise. It was 7 months. It was a mission training program. I had heard about it. I didn't want to go to college right away. I was like, I kind of want to do something else. Like, I was like thinking like AmeriCorps or something. And then I heard about this program, and it had like some service aspects. And, we were going to go to Notre Dame for a month to study theology and philosophy. I'm like, this sounds cool. So signed up for it. And it was a super life-changing event for me, and kind of started this spiral of, not spiral, that sounds bad, but that program for me, and that moment in my life, I think up until then, my faith had been more about my parents, expression. And I went to church because I was a kid and I didn't have a choice. And I went to youth group because my mom made me go to youth group. And after a while, I started to like it, but it was from them. And so doing this program, I took ownership of my own faith, and it was 7 months. It was beautiful. Had this amazing experience and this call to ministry in that time. And I did youth ministry for several years, and then I moved on and started doing music ministry. So I was leading worship. I've been leading worship in Catholic Christian spaces for almost 20-some years. And I say that because 2 years ago, 2018, I released a record called Shine. And it wasn't a worship record. It was something kind of very different. It was me trying to be a little bit more honest, to talk about, through song, through music, my experiences as a Catholic, as a black Catholic, as a black man in America, the things that I've experienced. And it was a beautiful, I hate recording music. I hate it. It's going into the studio, for me as a musician, is like the most nerve-wracking time. I'd rather be in front of people playing songs. And the studio has always been not the easiest place, but this last record was so almost cathartic for me, because there was no agenda as far as, okay, I want this label to hear this, and I want this song to be, it was just, no, this is about truth-telling. And there's a song on that record called, this is not a shameless plug for Shine, for this record, but if you want to listen to it on Spotify, please feel free. Every stream helps. But there's a song on the record called Your Table. And the chorus says, if life is a symphony, do I have a part to play? And I might have stolen that, maybe from someone, but I know where I did get it, actually. And this is going to make me seem like a real big nerd, but J.R.R. Tolkien, is anybody a Lord of the Rings fan? The Silmarillion, has anybody read that? Nerds. They talk about the creation of the world, and they talk about it in the context of it being this symphony, essentially, this musical expression, and it's stunning, so beautiful. And I was like, man, that really connected with me. So yeah, I did. I guess I did steal that theme. So don't tell the Tolkien family, but that line, if life is a symphony, do I have a part to play? And truth time, I growing up Catholic, black kid in Missouri, was, it felt isolating. I didn't see a whole lot of people who looked like me. There weren't a whole lot of depictions of saints who looked like me. And it felt like, and even the things that I like talk about being a nerd, like even the things that I read, like C.S. Lewis, who I'm a huge fan of, I didn't feel like I was a part of that story. I came to understand a lot about Christ and Jesus and the story of salvation through C.S. Lewis, through The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and through those books. But as a young kid reading those books, I noticed that I wasn't really there in that story. I wasn't truly represented. And that's something that I have always, and I know that I'm not the only one, had always wrestled with. And so that line in that song, Shine, it's not called Shine, the song's called Your Table. If life is a symphony, do I have a part to play, means a lot to me, and to maybe even speak it out was super important. I've played music now for several years. I've played music with bands for the better part of 20 years, and I've had like different guys come in and out, and there's nothing worse than like the one musician who's like not good, and they throw everybody off. One time I was playing, I had a gig in Charlottesville, yes, and I couldn't bring my band because they didn't have the budget. So like, hey, we have this band here, we'll play with you. I'm like, great. And everybody in this band was super stellar, so good, except for the drummer. The drummer was literally the worst drummer I've ever played with. He was awful, 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 bad. And he threw everything off, But I think the cool thing about that guy is he was bad, but he was like super into it and super passionate, and he was like there, and like if I said like, hey man, why don't you try this? He's like, yeah, I'll do it. He didn't do it great, but he was passionate about it. And then I've played with musicians who are good, but they don't really care. And like there was a time when I had a group of guys who were like all my best friends, and we were playing music together. And then all those guys started to filter out. So I would hire, just random dudes. And really great guys, really great players, but they weren't really into it. It was just another gig for them. And that actually threw me off more than anything. I'd rather have the guy who's not so great, who's passionate, than the super talented guy who's not super into what's happening. And it throws off the whole dynamic. It's this little community that gets kind of messed up, a small band or a big symphony. My first ever bass player was one of my best friends. I was the best man at his wedding. He was a decent bass player, but super timid. And he would, oftentimes he would like come up to me, songs we've played 1,000 times, and he's like, hey, the chords for this, and I'm like, you've played this so many times, you got this, it's fine. In that time, we got a new drummer. And this guy was amazing. He was like, not only was he amazing, he'd call people, all the band, to be better. And especially this bass player. He's like, hey, no more of this, I don't know the song, no more turning down, you're gonna play, even if you make a mistake, make it loud, you're gonna play out. And I never heard this guy play so well in the years that I played with him until this other drummer, this other musician said, hey man, you can be better, you can sound better, you're better than this. And I'm gonna challenge you to do that. And to me, that really speaks of, everybody has a voice, right? Everybody has something to offer. I think, at least as far as like our faith, the best thing I can think of is we were baptized. I was baptized. You were baptized, priest, prophet, and king. We don't talk about that as often as we should, right? I mean, that's like powerful stuff. You were baptized, priest, prophet, and king. Prophet, priest, king. I'm just saying that. I just bring that out because because I think a lot of times, I remember one time I was really young and I was just starting to lead worship, and I did this worship night, and this friend of mine comes up to me. She's like, hey, that was really good. And I'm like, no, it was terrible. I'm horrible. I sucked. And she was like, stop doing that. I'm like, what? She's like, stop. That's not real. It's false humility. Like, I came and said that you did a great job. Receive it. I was like, oh yeah, I should do that. And I feel like we probably go through this a lot where we have this thing, this burden, this talent, and we're maybe afraid of it, or if we let it out, we're like, no, 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 not me, not me, not me. And it does take community, right, to sometimes to be reminded of the greatness that's in us. It's a hard thing. That's been a hard thing for me to reconcile, because I've always kind of come and even written songs from this aspect of I'm horrible, I'm a worm, I'm terrible, don't listen to me, don't like me. And it was such a hard transition for me when I realized, no, I do belong, right? I do have a voice. Whatever God has given me and whatever I'm doing, like, I should step into it with purpose. And sometimes that takes a gentle reminder, a nudge from someone to say, hey, you can be better. To find your authentic thing, your voice. I talked about passion in the beginning. It's life could be easy, right? Like you do the thing, you follow the thing, you do the thing that everyone expects you to do, and then before you know it, like my friend Matt, you realize that you're not really passionate about much. And you're just kind of filling the spaces in between breaths. And it doesn't matter where you're at, you know. It doesn't matter if you're young or old, or somewhere in the middle. You're still baptized, priest, prophet, king. And sometimes in order to step into that, we got to step outside of ourselves, maybe put ourselves in the hands of others who will encourage us, who will walk with us. Growing up, I had a little bit of an identity crisis, because I was this black kid who was also very Nigerian, and I felt like I was constantly trying to figure out who I was. But I was always, and I've always been passionate about, and probably because of my mom, passionate about justice. And Martin Luther King is obviously a huge hero of mine. And in those moments when I was like trying to figure out who I was, his words helped a lot. I watched the movie Selma. I don't know if you guys ever saw that movie that came out several years ago. And I love that movie because I think we have a long view of Dr. King. We see him from kind of far away, and we're like, yeah, great person. This movie was cool because it was like, it kind of put flesh and bone on Dr. King. We saw a man, you know, not just this person with a statue in Washington. And, you know, it was like cool. Like he smoked. I didn't know that. And I was like, oh, I was kind of shocked, you know, like this was a guy, a real guy. He had, you know, like he had, you know, had kids that he had to manage, and just the weight of the world on his shoulders. And there's a scene in that movie where he's feeling, he needs encouragement. He's feeling down. And he calls Malaya Jackson, who's a gospel singer at the time. And he's like, I just need you to sing over me. I was like, oh man, you know, like, because we've kind of sterilized that part of him, the humanness, the guy who struggled, the guy who was afraid, you know, the guy who stepped into danger, you know, almost every other day. And at the time that he was discouraged, he called his friend to sing over him. You know, in that movie too, it showed he had a community of other activists and friends and family who also were there for him and cared for him. And, you know, Dr. King didn't even really want to be, his dad was a preacher, didn't really want to be a preacher at first. But he eventually followed in his dad's footsteps and then moved to Montgomery. And they were only, him and Coretta were only there for a year. And then the Montgomery boycotts happened. Rosa Parks, who was the secretary of the local chapter of the NAACP, sparked the protests. And Dr. King was kind of tasked to be the spokesperson of that. He was fairly anonymous before then. And, you know, when you talk about finding your voice, your authentic voice, it's really about opening your eyes to what is around you, right? Because it's a moment, you know, it's just this moment that Dr. King, for instance, saw this need. I'm sure he lived in this incredibly oppressive environment, and then he saw the need, opened his eyes and said, I'm ready to step into this. And, you know, I saw this quote, I think it was, I can't remember who it was from, but I'm going to butcher it, so I won't even try. But basically the sentiment was, you know, for people like Dr. King, who had to spend his whole life fighting for equality. But man, oh man, have you ever read his stuff or heard him speak? You know, he was profound and prophetic and poetic and bold. And I am grateful for his legacy. But the reality is he probably wanted to do something else. Or maybe just be a preacher, just at his church, you know. He still would have been alive. We wouldn't have known who he was. And there would have been other people. It's not like Martin Luther King was the only person who was working for justice in those days. Somebody else would have stepped up. Somebody else would have been tasked. But he was there, and he said yes. But I bet you he would have loved to just not do that and to live a long life. Says that in his last speech. He wanted a long life and longevity, kind of knew what was coming at the end. But he stepped into that. And that is scary, right? It is scary to feel that burden, right? To see something that you know that God probably wants you to step into. It's a scary, scary thing to speak up for something that you know needs to be said, you know. Dr. King was thrust into the national spotlight into that moment in his life, took this huge left turn, and now we have statues in a day and so much to be grateful for. And he really stepped into that idea of priest, prophet, and king. Stepping into his, you know, authentic voice. And what does that mean, your authentic voice? It doesn't mean you actually have to speak or say anything. Obviously he did and spoke eloquently, but his actions also spoke so loud. You know, he would receive the Nobel Peace Prize, and then he would walk on a bridge and get hit with rocks, all for the cause of justice. And all for the cause of Christ, right? Because I think sometimes we, especially now, but I'm sure, I know even then, you know, Martin Luther King was a preacher. He was a man, you know, of God, trying to live his life according to Christ and his teachings. And he had that burden. And so on top of that, in order for him to do those things, he needed that community behind him, right? He needed those people to sing to him over the phone, to correct him or encourage him. And I think that's very important for us, right, to remember. And I'm not saying that everybody is going to needs to have this impact like Dr. King. But this quote, which I'm pretty sure is actually not St. Francis, but it gets attributed to him. Sometimes I preach the gospel, and what's the quote? Sometimes I preach the gospel, sometimes I use words. Something like that. It talks about and really points to the fact that your voice and your movement through the world doesn't actually need your words. It just needs your yes and your action. And then to continue, to be encouraged to go, to be surrounded by the people who are going to encourage you and keep you going. Back to those lyrics. If life is a symphony, do I have a part to play? And it's a kind of rhetorical question in the song. Because if I'm honest, there's sometimes I'm like, do I have a part to play? Is there a place, for me? Back in 6th grade, I had a math teacher. There weren't a lot of black kids in my school, but I had a math teacher, and there was, in her class, there was 4 black people, myself and 3 other of my friends. And it was like the most black people I'd ever had in one class at one time. It was great. And so, but this teacher just didn't seem like she liked us in particular. And, even after a while, some of the other our classmates would mention that. It's like, what's wrong? Like, why does Miss Wise hate you guys? And then one day after class, and this kind of goes back to my own identity, after class, she pulls me aside and she says, hey, you don't have to be like them. It's like just a very clear memory in my head. She's like, you don't have to be like them. And, it was like such a hurtful thing, kind of also confirmed a lot of things that we had been feeling that I had told my mom about. She's like, no. So I went home and I told my mom, like, this is what she said and this is kind of what she thinks of us and them, essentially. And my mom went to bat for me. When I talk about, where I learned kind of like my own passion for justice, my mom went to bat. She came to school and raised holy heaven until she got me moved from that math class. And, the teacher was repentant, I guess, at the end. And, but it kind of reminded, it was, a kind of a nail in the coffin, not a nail in the coffin, but another kind of like knock, like it was cool to see my mom stand up for me and go to bat for me. And, we got this thing done. But afterwards, you're kind of left with this feeling. And that's, and that wasn't the first time. That was obviously a really big example. But it was one of those things for me, started this throughout a lot of my young life from then till high school. I really wanted to be a civil rights worker. And it wasn't until I did this program, Youth Arise, that I kind of just abandoned all that. But some of my best moments, informative moments, was taking this class called this African American Studies class in high school. I took it for 2 years, and this teacher was amazing. He wasn't black; he was white, and he was teaching this African American Studies class, and he was awesome. And he was so knowledgeable, and he really encouraged me. I took it my junior year, and then my senior year of high school, I took the class again. He's like, hey, this is going to be the same curriculum, but I want you in my class. What if you did an independent study? And I said, okay, great. So he trusted me enough. And let me tell you, when I was not a good student. Sometimes I'm like, don't even know how I graduated high school. I just wasn't motivated in school at all. So for him to trust me with this was like a pretty big deal. It wasn't like I was like this straight A student who was like, yeah, Ike's got it. It's like, no. But his trust in me was huge. And I decided to do my independent study that year, my senior year, on Rastafarianism for the first semester. And the second semester, I did reggae music. And this teacher was so cool, he didn't really have a final, he had a final presentation. So he's like, hey, at the end of your final presentation for the second semester, I want you, for your presentation, as part of your presentation, I want you to write a song and sing it. Now, me here now, you think, oh yeah, of course, you write a song and sing it, easy. But back then, I didn't play guitar, I never sang in a choir, I never sang for anyone ever, I didn't know I could sing. So it was like such a random thing for him to say to me, hey, I want you to write a reggae song for your final presentation and sing it. It's like, still, I think about it, gives me chills. I'm like, what? I remember being so dumbfounded, like, why would he ask me to do that? But I did. I wrote this reggae song. I don't know where it is. It's been a long time, but I wrote this reggae song, and then I sang it at the end of my senior year, just for like this class and like parents and whatnot. My mom was there, my brother, my sister. So I do my presentation. At the end of it, I'm like, okay, Mr. Janda wanted me to sing this song, write the song and sing it. I'm gonna sing it. I'm not a singer, I'm terrible, but just bear with me. So I sang the song, people clap. I'm like, thanks for being nice. My mom comes up to me crying. She's like, oh, I'm so proud of you. You know, moms are just, they're nice. Siblings are not so nice. So I was like, I know my brother and my sister are gonna rip me apart. My brother was like, hey man, that wasn't bad. I'm like, really? And my sister was like, yeah, I was gonna leave the room because I didn't want to see you embarrass yourself, but you actually did okay. And it is like such a funny thing because it was like these little moments along the way where I'm like, and the next day I went and bought a guitar, my first guitar at a pawn shop. Like this like randomly prophetic word from this social studies teacher started me on this trajectory that has never stopped. But in that time, I was and still am so passionate about justice. But in the subsequent years, when I moved to Phoenix and was doing youth ministry and music ministry, I kind of let that kind of fade to the background. And it wasn't until very recent events in the past several years, with killings of kids like Trayvon Martin and Mike Brown, which happened in my backyard, an hour and a half from where I grew up, kind of reawoke that in me. And up until then, I was just a singer of songs. And then I started using my voice to talk about what I knew and to speak for justice. And received a lot of backlash for it. And you catch me in a funny time in my life because that's where I'm currently in this moment, and I love that I was brought here to do this because I don't do this. I don't speak ever. But I'm in a moment in my life in the past several years where I have been using my voice as authentically as I can, and it has been beautiful and lonely and hard all at the same time. And I've lost friends and opportunities, which was like okay before I was married. Now I have 2 kids, and a family that depends on me. And if I just didn't say anything, it might make my life a little bit easier. But I can't. One is maybe by default, because when you grow up feeling like an outsider sometimes, when you grow up as a little black child in a very white church, when you watch a man get beaten when you're 8, and then watch those people who beat him not face any consequences. It shapes you and affects you and stays with you. So maybe that passion is just by default from what I've seen, what I've experienced on my own, and starting to use my voice has not been an easy thing. And that's the reality, right? I guarantee you that Dr. King would have just loved to be just a guy who got to be anonymous and, write some books, write some poetry, and watch his kids grow up. And this is an extreme example. I'm not calling myself Dr. King if that's I'm just using as I hope you guys understand that. But as Christians, we follow a man, right, who, like all the prophets, old and modern, have said, no, I see what needs to be said and what needs to be done, and I'm going to say and do those things, whether they be hard or not. And that is the real obstacle, I think, to stepping into your authentic voice, stepping into a vocation that's challenging. But we need that, right? We needed Dr. King or someone like him, and we had him and many like him. We need Jesus. And in his hardest moments, let this cup pass from me. But he still did the thing anyway. We need world changers. And it doesn't have to be this massive, grandiose thing. It can be very, very small, little things. But I guarantee you that those little things will probably cost you. It'd be great if they were like, you could do these good things and they would make you rich and make you feel good. But that's generally not how it goes. Not to say that you can't be rich or be comfortable. But if that is your goal, to just be comfortable, then you are just kind of existing, and then your passion, you never see it when it presents itself. Your burden. Dr. King living in Montgomery, he could have said, not me, not me. I'll be in the background, or I can write some speeches for you guys, but I'm not going to be out in front. You guys, take that. But he didn't. He stepped into that. And when I tell you, once again, because we're Christians, we follow Christ. When I talked about Dr. King and relating it to myself, I'm not at all putting myself there, but there was a moment in my life 6 years ago where I decided to not be quiet about the things that I am passionate about injustice. And it cost, and it's still costing. Right now, it costs me. But it is right, and it is needed, because we are baptized priest, prophet, king, and we don't talk about that enough. We don't talk about that. We need prophetic people, even if it's just being the teacher who trusts a kid who's untrustable and says, hey, man, I want to give you this chance. And it's risky for me maybe, but just, I want to give you a chance. That's a very small way, and that changed my life, changed the whole trajectory of my life. Or it's the big things, that cost you friends, that strain relationships with family. The reality is it is both and, right? Christ desires us to be one and to be unified, but he also desires justice. He also desires our passion. And calls us and baptizes us priest, prophet, king. And the king thing, I think, that just seems like a throwaway, but I don't think it is. Because for as much as I felt like I didn't belong, or I was on the outside, I had forgotten that I was a king. That we are collectively that. That God, we're not some wriggling worm on, God's finger, but he breathed his life into us. His essence into us. That should not be taken lightly. And I don't think, especially for those of us who are baptized, priest, prophet, and king, that God wants us to just count our breaths until the end. So what does that mean? How do you do that? We open our eyes and we see. We embrace those who are going to walk with us and challenge us and move us forward. And we realize that we are his sons and daughters, royalty. And that burden, that small burden that you feel, that call, that little twinge when your heart is like, I think I need to be doing this or saying this, or man, go with that. And it might be to the detriment of your comfortable life, but that is okay. I'm in a super chaotic and beautiful time in my life. So, tons of upheaval. And I think for me personally, I decided several years ago that it didn't matter. It didn't matter if I was further along here or there, and my music career or whatever that meant. I knew that there were things that God had kind of placed on my heart since the very beginning, and that he was calling me to speak about and be passionate and vocal about and work towards and challenge myself and others towards. And it costs. It does cost. And I'd love to say, it's okay, it'll be all great in heaven. Because that's a hard thing to say, because we're here now. But I will say for myself personally, and as I find myself in transition and still figuring it all out for myself, the pain and the chaos is still wrapped up in beauty. Because God has given us hearts and to unite our hearts with his heartbeat. It's not hard because we were baptized priest, prophet, king. It probably should have been called priest, prophet, and king because I keep saying it. But it has been one of these things that's like, we don't talk about it enough. And if we believe in a good God, if we believe in the sacraments, that's a big, huge deal. And it should cause us to step in to those places that we know God's calling us, the hard places. Because stamped in every single one of our souls and our bones is his life and his love and his passion. And we're called to run after that, even when it is hard, even when it's uncomfortable. I am married. Got married several years ago, a couple years ago. We've got 2 kids. My son, Remy, if you come up to me afterwards, I'll show you pictures and pictures and pictures of my kids because they're very cute. It's been the craziest thing ever. I was 35 when I got married, and I was 36. No, I don't remember time, but 37, I think, when we had our first. And it was like instant, life-changing, monumental stuff. And my wife had been laboring, and it was hard, and finally I was downstairs getting food, and our doula calls me. He's like, they're going to do a C-section right now, get up here. I'm like, ah. So I'm running up, and it's kind of this terrifying thing, and I'm in this like kind of waiting room, and they bring me in. My wife's all covered, and like we've been waiting for 36 hours, and all of a sudden it's like snips that, and all of a sudden here's the baby, and I'm an instantly, just in love, and I'm, bawling and holding my son. And your perspective and my perspective has changed so much, and I think as I move forward in using my voice and knowing that, gosh, if I didn't, we could have more toys maybe for my son and for my daughter. We could have, more of this and more of that, a bigger house. But I think more than anything, whatever vocation, married life or whatever, if you get married and have kids, your kids don't want to see you just living and existing. They want to see you alive. They want to see you passionate. And I think for sure I've felt this burden to be bold and to speak about injustice, racism, and the things that I see that are wrong in society, but I also do it for my son. And for him to be able to say that I could have chosen this easier path, but I didn't. That might seem a little cliche, but it is true that God, in his, humor sometimes maybe. Sometimes I wish I just didn't have that, like it'd be a lot easier, but I do. And I've decided to not be afraid of it anymore. And so I don't know what that is for you. I don't know it looks different for everyone. What is that thing that you might be afraid of? What is that light that you might be fearful of? That might cost you. It's going to look different for everyone. But I do encourage you to run after it, to step into your priesthood, to be that prophet, to be that king that the world needs, because we need you. We need world changers. Amen. I just thank you for being here at 9:18. We were supposed to get started at 6:30, right? I slept 2 hours last night, but I honestly was so excited to be here. When I got your email, Father, 6 months ago. so much has changed in that time. And but I was so pumped to be able to come and speak. So thank you guys for listening. Thank you for waiting. And yeah. Yeah. Questions. I forgot about questions, so I probably went too long. I'm very sorry, but questions.
I was following your mother in that gas station, and then you followed her, and then you changed the topic completely. I want to know what happened.
So, my mom just gave him a piece of her mind, and I was just kind of a spectator, watching. Nothing really happened except for my mom got out of the car and saw that there was something that she thought was wrong, and she said, "I'm not going to let this stand." And whether or not it was, maybe they came. Maybe all the cops in the town came, randomly at that moment, but it didn't seem like that. And so my mom felt like she needed to say something in defense of her family, of her kids, and what she saw was an injustice. So yeah, that's what happened. And so she went in there, gave him a piece of her mind, and I think one of the police officers tried to. He's like, "Hey, didn't we go to high school together?" Something like that. He tried to diffuse it. And she's like, "I'm from Nigeria." She's a very fiery woman, so it was a lot of yelling, and then she marched out of there. And then my dad was like, "What, do you feel better?" And she's like, "Yeah, I needed to tell them that they were wrong." He was like, "Okay, fine." And I was immensely proud of my mom. It was super formative time in my life, moment in my life. I'm like, wow, what a woman. That's awesome. So that's what happened. Yeah.
I have a question. Are you saying that of course there's a black and white and other problems that we face. But are you saying the Catholic Church has needs for, what would you call it, activism in the Catholic Church?
Yes. Yeah, I would definitely say that. There's a picture that I love, and it's Dr. King standing arm in arm, linked arms with two Catholic priests on either side of him, and I love that picture, because yes, Amos, which is like a favorite scripture of mine, but it talks about let justice roll like waters, and earlier in that scripture he talks about, I hate your songs. Amos is a prophet. He's talking about. He's talking from the voice of God, and he says, God says, "I hate your festivals, I hate your songs. I close my ears when you sing them. Instead, let there be a flood of justice, and an endless procession of righteous living." That is absolutely a part of, Jesus. When we think about Jesus and his ministry, we love to talk about, the feeding of the 5,000 and turning the water into wine, but also his care for the least. His care for those who were on the margins, with their backs against, the wall. He gets mad and he overturns the tables of people selling money in God's house. Like this is a radical Jesus, and the holy people of his time were the ones that caught the brunt of his ire, I guess you could say. Not ire, he just, he was harder on them. And I do believe that the church, if activism is something that is uncomfortable, it's really just standing with those who need someone to stand with them, who are on the outside, who are marginalized. And that is where Jesus was. And that's where we should be. Cool. Thank you guys so much. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, do you have
Yeah, I think it's all set, so we're gonna do the
in here? Or?
we'll do it right here.
Great,
Yeah, so,
perfect.
Yeah, so I think we're gonna keep it going, keep the live feed going, and then I'm just gonna get adoration set up.
Great.
And then we'll be good.
Great.
So I wanna thank you for
Yeah.
saying it. I don't know, I'm touched. I'm moved and inspired to step into my truth, despite whatever it is that comes my way. I hope you are too. Ike's going to sing a little bit, and we're going to open up our time of prayer of adoration. Because it's close to 9:30, what we'll do is we'll open up for a half hour of adoration. So I need to recruit my man Alex over there. If you could help me, bro, just get things set up, that'd be great. And Tyler, could you help me, bro? Okay, good. And then we'll get things going. So you are all welcome to stay for some adoration. Thank you again, Ike, for coming. You keep talking, man. Just keep talking. You know what I mean? You don't stop talking. I think the world needs to hear your voice. And praise God for the gift of you. So thank you very much again. Thank you. Thank you. So, adoration at 9:30.
salutaris ostia, que celi panis ostium, bella premundos genias,
the mountains. Go on and tell it to the masses that He is God. Shout, go on and scream it from the mountain. Go on and tell it to the masses that He is God. And we will sing out hallelujah, and we will cry out hallelujah, and we will sing out hallelujah, God. Caught up in your presence, I just wanna sit here at your feet. I'm caught up in this holy moment. I never wanna leave. I'm sorry when I've just gone through the motions. I'm sorry when I just sang another song. Take me back to where we started. I open up my heart to you. I'm sorry when I've come with my agenda. I'm sorry when I forgot that you're enough. Take me back to where we started. I open up my heart to you. I'm caught up in your presence. I just wanna sit here at your feet. I'm caught up in this holy moment. I never wanna leave. Oh, I'm not here for blessings. Jesus, you don't owe me anything more than anything that you can do. I just want you. I just want you. And nothing else. And nothing else, Jesus. Nothing else will do. I just want you. And nothing else. And nothing else, Jesus. Nothing else will do. I just want you. And nothing else. And nothing else, Jesus. Nothing else will do. I just want you. And nothing else. And nothing else, Jesus. Nothing else will do. I just want you. And nothing else. And nothing else, Jesus. Nothing else will do. I just want you. And nothing else. And nothing else, Jesus. Nothing else will do. I'm caught up in your presence. I just wanna sit here at your feet, caught up in this holy moment. I never wanna leave. Oh, I'm not here for blessings. Jesus, you don't owe me anything more than anything that you can do. I just want you. Lord, I come, I confess, bowing here, I find mine. Without you, I fall apart. You're the one that guides my heart. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I sin runs deep, your grace is more. Where grace is found is where you are. And where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. And where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. So teach my song to rise to you when temptation comes my way. And when I cannot stand, I'll fall on you. Jesus, you're my hope and stay. And when I cannot stand, I'll fall on you. Jesus, you're my hope and stay. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need you. You're my one defense, my righteousness. Oh God, how I need. And how great is our God. Sing with me, how great is our God. Oh, we'll see how great is our God. You're the name above all names. You are worthy of all praise. And my heart will sing, how great is our God. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to me. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, Sanctum ego sacramentum venerem celui et antiquum documentum novo cedat ricui preste fide supplementum sensum defectui genitori genitoque laus et jubilatio solus honor virtus quoque sit et benedictio procedenti ab utroque compassit laudatio. Amen.
Let us pray. Lord Jesus Christ, you give us the Eucharist as a memorial of your suffering and death. May our worship of the sacrament of your body and blood help us to experience the salvation you won for us and the peace of the kingdom, where you live with the Father and the Holy Spirit, God forever and ever. Amen. The divine praises. Blessed be God. Blessed be his holy name. Blessed be Jesus Christ, true God and true man. Blessed be the name of Jesus. Blessed be his most sacred heart. Blessed be his most precious blood. Blessed be Jesus in the most holy sacrament of the altar. Blessed be the Holy Spirit, the Paraclete. Blessed be the great Mother of God, Mary most holy. Blessed be your holy and immaculate conception. Blessed be your glorious assumption. Blessed be the name of Mary, Virgin Mother. Blessed be Saint Joseph, the most chaste spouse. Blessed be God and his angels and his saints.
Bless the Lord, O my soul, O my soul, worship his holy name. Sing like never